So, Drake has surprised us with his seventh studio album, honestly, Nevermind, and I'm sure we were all wondering what direction Drake would go in after dropping Certified Lover Boy last year. He received quite a lot of backlash from hip hop fans and his own listeners, and many have said it's one of his worst projects to date. It's almost shocking that CLB came out in September of last year, given that people are still talking about it. I don't really have a personal opinion on CLB in its entirety, since I couldn't even finish the album. I didn't expect the album to have anything else for me at that point. I also couldn't justify listening to an additional hour of an album I was not enjoying. I was relieved to see that Honestly Nevermind had a much shorter track list this time around and is almost 40 minutes shorter than CLB. Additionally, I was hoping for more effort from Drake, who seems to have become complacent with his access to top tier features as well as production. I'm happy to say that I was able to make it to the end of this album, but I was left with a feeling of indifference and the experience was overall uninteresting. I can see this album being enjoyable in certain situations, and I think it succeeds in creating the vibe it was going for, although it struggles to stray beyond this very specific vibe. Falling Back is the first song from the album. We're exposed to this minimalistic production that establishes what's to come on this project. Along with late night sounding dance music, we get familiar melodic vocalizations from Drake that we have heard before, like on One Dance, for example. The song is listenable enough and it sounds fine on the ear initially, but it gets old pretty fast, and Drake doesn't really add anything to the song. At this point, I said to myself, okay, that was kind of a cool vibe. Let's see what else he has to offer. Little did I know that he would be giving us 8 more versions, if not more, of the same kind of vibe. As I went deeper into this album, it became apparent that we were going to keep experiencing the same feelings, sounds, minimalism, and that these tones would dominate the entire album. Text Go Green sounds uncanny to Falling Back to the point where it's not even worth breaking down sound wise. It sounds like a second attempt of making the exact same song, and it sounds even more low key than Falling Back. Texts Go Green could also have been a lot shorter, and it did not need to be 5 minutes long. The vast majority of songs beyond this point do not have much variety, and songs like A Keeper or Flights Booked or Liability just become a waste of time for all of us. Liability really sucks, by the way. The effort from Drake's part is lacking when he is singing, and he is constantly coated in auto-tuned distortion throughout this album. It causes him to fall into the background, and he never sounds anything more than agreeable. He frequently does not provide enough variety in his contributions to sound interesting. There is a little more urgency on the song Overdrive, and I think this song has a better chorus compared to a lot of the album. I somewhat enjoyed the song Downhill. The underwater like ambiance and the chorus go over fairly well, in my opinion. I also didn't mind the random guitar untie that binds, but I didn't really like anything else about that song. Songs like Currents or Calling My Name and Massive deviate slightly in that they are more of an EDM dance kind of vibe. Drake offers more space to these beats, but they end up having weak climaxes most of the time. Songs like Calling My Name are so minimalistic that the climax barely has anything to the beat, and it's hard to imagine people dancing to something so minimal. It is also unbelievable that this song had 5 different producers working on it. Perhaps sounding minimalistic is more challenging than I thought it was. Currents also has a really obnoxious bed squeaking sound that I just couldn't really get by, and it's not worth tolerating just to enjoy a song that's not good to begin with. I think Massive does a better job of creating this EDM dance vibe, and I can see it being a hit with the mainstream audience. This isn't a sound I'm particularly fond of since I mainly listen to rap music, and listening to this album with my headphones on, sitting alone in my room, felt like I was doing something wrong. We eventually get a much needed change on the song Sticky, and this is the first performance in which Drake actually raps. It is a banger compared to the rest of the album, but it keeps that same nocturnal minimalism that we've heard thus far. We get some standard braggadocio about Drake's jewelry, his status, as well as shoutouts to Virgil Abloh, French Woman, Young Thug, and Carnage, who played a role in making this album what it is. It is refreshing to hear Drake rap at this point in the album, especially because it's like he's regaining our interest in the project since a lot of us probably fell asleep by then. There are some cringe bars that didn't go over well with me, such as ringing like I got engaged. There's also a pretty good bar where he says he hasn't changed, but that he's millions, which is kind of clever, but also a little bit silly. He also likens girls to fish that he catches and throws back into the ocean, which comes across as a little more douchey than cold-blooded. The only other rap song on this album is Jimmy Cooks, and this is the last song on the album. It's certainly going to be a highlight for rap fans, and there's a pretty decent 21 Savage feature on it. Drake has some pretty decent lines, and the John Wayne and Yellowstone bar was pretty clever, to be honest. 21 Savage does his thing with some pretty violent imagery, and it's kind of an odd way to finish off a dance album. It makes me wonder if this song had different origins entirely. As expected, there's really not much Drake has to offer when reading between the lines of this album. Drake is very much on brand in regards to being a lady killer throughout this album, and he talks a little bit about his love life as well as how he's not handling things so well. He comes across as bitter multiple times throughout the project, but he reaches peak toxicity when we get to Text Go Green. He sings about blocking someone, hence why they're sending green messages all of a sudden, and goes as far as to say that she should hate herself for not being with him, which is a little bit much in my opinion. On other songs, Drake will do a complete 180 and sing about how he misses a particular person and yearns for them, like on Calling My Name or Flights Booked. It does sound like he was going through the motions of a breakup at this point, but once again, this is Drake. It's hard to know. The subject matter is within his comfort zone, and I wouldn't expect anything less from him. It is easy to assume that Drake wanted to play it safe this time around, and honestly, Nevermind aims to be more atmospheric than anything else. The music here is certainly listenable, but the album doesn't go beyond agreeableness that is directed at a mainstream audience. The mixing is on point when it comes to giving us that polished late-night vibe, and the beats sound as clean as they possibly could. Although, there's not really much to write home about in terms of the beats themselves. The production is more or less a weak foundation for Drake to depend on, even though his performances are lacking to begin with. He owes a lot to his producers and engineers for doing the majority of the heavy lifting. I wish that there were more standout moments and that more risks were taken. The strongest moments on the album were definitely Sticky and Jimmy Cooks, and I don't say that just because I'm a rap music fan. I say that because they are the most focused tracks on the album and that they are actually attention grabbing. I'm expecting to hear songs off this album out at a clothing store or even at the gym in certain moments. And those are usually the only times I hear Drake's music anyways. I don't feel like I'm able to give this album a fair review because I don't really listen to dance music in the first place. But if I had to give it a score, it would have to be a 2 or 3 out of 10 at most. Thank you for watching my first YouTube video, and I'll see you next time. If anyone wants to leave some feedback in the comments below, please do, because I'm more than open to any criticism that will improve my ability to make these videos.